Chapter 1. The New Neighbors. The song from the woods first called to me on a bright June morning while I sat on the back porch swing rereading my favorite cookbook. I could only hear a few notes, a small taste of a half-remembered melody that meandered through the air, but I was instantly hungry to hear the whole thing and discover where it came from. I crossed the yard and stopped at the edge of the woods. As the music drifted toward me like an irresistible aroma, I held my breath and stepped into the trees. "Hey, Mimi!" My big sister Jules' voice yanked me back to reality. I spun around. She was dribbling a soccer ball, of course. She leapt over the ball and ran to me. "I need your help." I pushed my hair out of my eyes. That's the kind of hair I have. The kind that's always in my face. "Did you hear that?" I asked, sure I could still hear lingering notes in the summer air. "I want to..." Jules grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the porch. She pointed at the driveway next door where a moving van and a silver car were parked. "The new neighbors are here. Let's bring them the brownies you baked this morning." "But those are for Dad." "Welcome home brownies, since he'd been gone all week." "Make him something else. Come on, don't let them see us yet." But a tall teenage boy with shaggy brown hair was carrying boxes into what used to be my best friend Emma's house. So that was why Jules wanted to go next door. "He's cute, huh?" Jules said. I shrugged. He looked around Jules' age, 15 or 16. "I want to make a good first impression. Bring the brownies, and whatever you do, don't tell Raya." Our sister Raya is a year older than Jules and 5 years older than me. She's like an Aleppo pepper, striking and fragrant, but with a substantial kick. We reached the back porch, and Jules pulled her dark hair out of its ponytail. "I'll be down in a minute." She sprinted inside and bounded up the stairs. I turned to the woods and listened again. Nothing. I missed the song already. Where had it come from? It had been a single fluid line of melody, repetitive, insistent. It might have been a bird, but it had an elusive quality that made me wonder. And why did it sound so familiar? I couldn't care less about the new neighbors. I wanted to turn right back around and head into the woods like I used to do with Emma. She loved quests. If only she still lived next door. But Jules would take my brownies over there whether I liked it or not, so I figured I should at least make sure they were presented attractively. I grabbed my cookbook off the porch swing and went into the kitchen. As I cut the brownies and put them on my favorite purple platter, I couldn't help smiling at the scent of chocolate and cinnamon. These were supposed to be for Dad, who loved chocolate, and who didn't, but would particularly appreciate the warm spices I'd put into them. I'd even added a dash of cayenne for extra zing. "How now, spirit, whither wander you?" My brother Henry made a beeline for the brownies. I blocked his arm before he could grab one, and he recoiled dramatically. He was constantly reciting lines from the latest play he was performing in and barely spoke normal English anymore. "None for you, Shakespeare," I said. "Not unless you come next door with us. We're taking them to the new neighbors." Henry bowed deeply. "Fear not, my lord, your servant shall do." "Shall do so." He took a pitcher of lemonade from the fridge and poured a glass. "What's going on?" said Raya. I hadn't heard her come into the room. But then, being light on her feet was one of the things that made Raya such a great dancer. She looked up from her phone just long enough to scrutinize me with hawk-like eyes. "Oh, nothing," I said chalantly. Jules would kill me if Raya found out our plan and tried to tag along with us. Every boy Jules liked seemed to become obsessed with Raya instead. "We're saying hi to the new neighbors," said Henry. "I'm going for Mimi's fantastic brownies." "How remarkably boring," said Raya with a smile. She turned back to her phone. That was a close call. I let out a relieved breath and finished arranging the brownies. Bits of the song from the woods played in my mind. It tugged at me like a secret waiting around the corner. Jules barreled back into the room. "Ready, Mimi?" Her hair was in a ponytail as always, but it was neater than usual, and her lips glistened. She stopped short. "What's everyone doing in here?" Raya sized up Jules. "We've been waiting for you. We all want to meet our new friends next door, don't we?" Jules glared at me and mouthed, "Thanks." I was about to explain that it wasn't my fault, but Jules had already grabbed the platter and stormed out the door. "Jules, hold up," I called. Jules muttered under her breath as she launched herself down the porch steps. She found the soccer ball and started dribbling it into the yard next door. Well, that should impress whatever boy she's after. If there's one thing boys love, it's a girl who can kick. Raya glided down the steps and started across the grass. I turned to Henry. "Quick, before they pull each other's hair out." I'll put a girdle round the earth in 40 minutes, said Henry, whatever that meant, but he was out on the porch with me in 4 seconds. As we hurried into Emma's yard, I thought I saw something move behind the swing set. No, it was just a bird. I listened again for the song, but only the whisper of the wind in the trees floated back to me. The melody had been happy. And sad. It reminded me of all the time I'd spent in the woods with Emma and how we'd never have another summer together, laughing and telling stories in the woods we both loved. The boy I'd seen earlier was walking from the side of the house to the open trunk of the silver car when he noticed us. "Hi," said Jules. She stopped the soccer ball and held out the plate. "Welcome to the neighborhood. Want to kick the ball around? Or have some brownies?" "Sure." The boy's face was covered in freckles, like an everything bagel. He eyed the soccer ball, then moved his hand toward the brownies, then stopped and grinned goofily at Jules. "Of course he wants to eat the brownies," said Raya. She snatched the platter and held it out. The boy glanced at Raya and, like most boys, he couldn't stop staring. "I'm Raya Maxon." She tossed her long, wavy hair away from her face like a shampoo model. "And this is my older brother, Henry. We live next door." Henry dipped his curly head in a salute. "Cole Clark," said the boy. "And this is our little sister, and Julie." "Jules," Jules said through her teeth as she glared down at Raya. Jules might be a year younger than Raya, but she's at least 4 inches taller, almost as tall as Henry. "And our littlest sister, 11-year-old Mira, but we all call her Mimi Mouse." I tried to smile. I'd gotten the nickname from Dad when I was 3, but it bothered me to hear her say it now, like I was still some tiny creature. I had to admit, though, that it fit. My siblings were always in the spotlight while I scurried in the shadows. "We brought you these," Jules said, grabbing the platter back from Raya and handing it to Cole. "Awesome," said Cole, eyeing the brownies. My brownies, not that anyone was going to tell him. "Let's go eat them over there." He nodded to the patio, where there was a low stone wall to sit on. A red-haired woman emerged from the house and waved at us as we made our way to the patio. "These are amazing," said Cole. He finished one brownie and took another. I'm already starting to feel at home. "Glad you like 'em," Jules scrunched her shoulders. "Welcome to Comedy, the hometown of the talented and famous." "What does that mean?" Cole asked, reaching for a third brownie. "We may seem like just an ordinary town outside of Boston," said Raya, "but dozens of famous people are from here, starting with the Revolutionary War hero George Babbitt. And the philosopher David Allen Trudeau," said Henry, "and Teresa Lee Falcott, the writer," said Jules, "and loads of others, including last year's winner of American Diva." "Fascinating," said Cole. "Maybe I won't miss San Diego after all." I rolled my eyes. They'd forgotten to mention the most important famous person from Comedy, Puffy Faye. He was the best pastry chef in the country. He'd written my favorite cookbook, and he hosted a baking competition on Food TV. But before I could say anything, Henry asked, "Do you play an instrument? My band's looking for a bassist." I didn't need to hear the saga of Henry's band again, so I wandered to a swing set, sat, and inhaled the sharp smells of the woods. There were several acres back there, and a creek that flowed southeast to join the Skedikede River. Emma and I loved roaming the woods all year round, but especially in the summer when sunlight filtered through the leaves, washing everything in shades of green, and the forest was filled with the sounds of twittering birds. We had climbed trees, waded into the creek, and sat in our hangout for hours, telling each other stories about secret forest creatures. Sometimes I could swear I heard the woods talking to me, coaxing me to stay longer. I hadn't had the heart to go there since Emma left, but after hearing the song, I knew I had to. A soccer ball rolled to a stop in front of me. "Kick it back, will you, Mimi?" Jules bounced on her toes on the patio. I stood. "I can just carry it." I pushed away unpleasant memories of my elementary school soccer games. "Come on, it's not that far. Just make sure you put some oomph in it." "Okay," I said. I took a breath, backed up a step, and kicked the ball hard. It sailed to the patio and landed right into my platter of brownies, which fell off the stone wall and shattered as it crashed to the ground. "Oh no!" I hurried to assess the damage. The area was strewn with shards of purple ceramic and dark chunks of brownie. I sighed and started to make a pile of the largest pieces. So much for Dad's treat. I'm so sorry, said Cole, stooping to help clean up the mess. Those brownies were delicious. Don't worry about it, said Raya. She turned to Jules. See what you did? How is it my fault? Jules asked. Why do you always have that ball attached to you? Raya prodded the brownie-covered ball with her toe like it was diseased. Can't you just give it a rest? You give it a rest. Jules brushed the ball off and held it on her hip. Mimi was the one who kicked it. You know how uncoordinated she is. Cole looked back and forth between my sisters and then at Henry with a puzzled expression. Henry shrugged at him and helped me clean up as my sisters continued sniping at each other. Hey! Jules cried out and rubbed her head. Something small dropped out of the sky. Pop! It made a dull sound as it bounced off Raya's shiny hair. She ducked and covered her head. Stop it! She bellowed. Something pinged Cole on the skull. Ow! I looked up. It was a bird. A brightly colored little bird. It glided over Henry and dropped something small that ricocheted off his forehead as he squinted into the sun. The bird finished its bombing run and flew to a big oak at the edge of the yard before returning with small objects clutched in each foot and its beak. I braced myself, but I didn't get hit. Everyone else got pelted at least twice more. I finally got a good look at the bird as it rested in the oak tree. It was about the size of a bluebird, but with bright yellow breast, brilliant green wings with a small blue patch, and a black stripe on its face. I'd never seen anything like it. It stared at me with shiny black eye before flying off into the woods. Jules straightened up and glared at Raya. What was that? A bird, I said, but I could barely believe it myself. Right. Raya scowled at Jules. It dropped these. I plucked one of the objects from the patio. Acorns. Birds don't drop acorns on people, said Henry, scratching his head. Lord, what fools these mortals be. Cole looked at me thoughtfully. A squirrel might, he said, but we'd have to be under its tree. Raya, Jules, are you out here? Time to go. It was Mom calling from our yard. Over here, Mom, I called back. In Emma's yard. I shook my head and wished it were still Emma's yard. Cole seemed nice enough, but his existence made my sisters even more impossible than usual. Luckily, Raya had a dance rehearsal, or Jules would have gotten all weird about her leaving with Cole while she went to soccer practice. Henry said he'd stay to help the Clarks bring boxes into the house. As Raya and Jules headed to the car, I realized I hadn't saved a single brownie for Dad. I couldn't wait to see him. He'd made me feel better, or at least help me laugh about everything. There was no time to make another batch, and I was all out of chocolate anyway, so I decided to bike into town to pick something up. I asked Mom, and she said it was fine as long as I was careful and came back before she returned with my sisters. I glanced up at the oak as I walked home. There was no sign of the bombardier bird. I couldn't help pausing at the edge of the woods. A breeze ruffled pine needles and maple leaves, and it felt like a warm breath on my face. I listened, hoping to hear the song again. But I didn't. Not then.